The bustling streets of New Chicago teemed with life, the towering skyscrapers and gleaming hovercraft creating a stark contrast to the pockets of civil unrest simmering beneath the surface. It was in this dynamic metropolis that Dr. Sarah Anderson, a brilliant young physicist, quietly orchestrated the beginnings of a revolution. Sarah had grown up in the shadow of the Universal Empire's oppressive rule, her scientific brilliance stifled by the Empire's rigid control over research and development. As she rose through the ranks, she became increasingly disillusioned, witnessing firsthand how the Empire exploited and subjugated the populations of conquered worlds, stripping them of their resources and autonomy. Now, at the age of 32, Sarah had assembled a network of like-minded individuals, scientists, engineers, political dissidents, all united in their desire to challenge the Empire's hegemony. In the privacy of hidden labs and safe houses, they worked tirelessly to develop advanced technologies that could level the playing field against the Empire's superior firepower. The time has come. Sarah addressed her inner circle, her piercing gaze sweeping across the room. Our simulations show that if we can disrupt the Empire's key supply lines and communication networks, it will create an opening for us to strike at the heart of their control over this sector. One of her lieutenants, a grizzled former military engineer named Jack, spoke up. "The risks are high, Sarah. The Imperial forces won't take kindly to our interference. We'll be outnumbered and outgunned." Sarah nodded solemnly. "I know the stakes, Jack, but we can't sit idly by while the Empire crushes the last vestiges of freedom in the galaxy. Earth has the potential to be the spark that ignites a galaxy-wide uprising." Another member of the group, a young hacker named Rika, stepped forward. "We've been able to infiltrate the Imperial communication relays on the outskirts of the system. If we time our attacks just right, we can cripple their ability to coordinate a response." "Excellent," Sarah said, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. "Then we move forward with the plan. Jack, I need you to finalize the targeting protocols for the sabotage strikes. Rika, make sure our communication channels remain secure. The rest of you, prepare your teams. We strike in 72 hours. As the meeting adjourned, Sarah lingered behind, lost in thought. She knew the risks were immense, but she could no longer stand idly by. The Empire's grip on the galaxy had to be broken, and Earth was poised to be the catalyst for change. In the following days, the Resistance Network sprang into action, meticulously coordinating their strikes against the Imperial infrastructure. Rika's team of hackers seamlessly infiltrated the communication relays, creating a temporary blind spot for the Empire's forces. Meanwhile, Sarah and her scientists fine-tuned the sabotage devices, ensuring they could inflict maximum disruption without drawing immediate retaliation. The fateful night arrived, and across the city, the resistance cells sprang into action. Explosions rocked Imperial supply depots, while key relay stations flickered and went dark, throwing the local Imperial command into disarray. Sarah watched the chaos unfold from a command center deep underground, her heart pounding with a mix of trepidation and hope. "Report," she demanded, her eyes fixed on the tactical displays. "The operation is proceeding as planned," Rika reported, her fingers flying across the holo interface. "We've managed to disrupt 78% of the Empire's communication and logistics networks in this sector. But they're starting to mobilize their forces. We don't have much time before they regain control." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Then we must press our advantage. Order the teams to move on the Imperial Command Center. It's time to send a message to the Empire." Rika hesitated. "Sarah, that's an extremely risky move. The Imperial garrison there is heavily fortified, and our forces are stretched thin. We could be walking into a trap." "We've come too far to back down now, Rika," Sarah said, her voice resolute. "This is our chance to show the Empire that we will no longer be cowed into submission. Prepare the assault teams. I'm leading the charge myself." Rika opened her mouth to protest, but the determination in Sarah's eyes silenced her. With a solemn nod, she relayed the orders, rallying the resistance fighters for the final, audacious push. As the assault force converged on the Imperial Command Center, the night sky was lit by the exchange of blaster fire and the rumble of hovering battle tanks. Sarah led the charge, her team of highly trained operatives providing cover as they breached the outer perimeter. They'd fought their way through the maze of corridors, finally reaching the central control room. There, standing tall amidst the chaos, was the Imperial Governor, a ruthless enforcer known for his brutal suppression of dissent. He regarded the intruders with a mixture of contempt and surprise. So, the rumors of a resistance movement on Earth were true, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. I must commend you for your audacity, but your petty rebellion ends here. He raised his hand, summoning a squad of elite Imperial guards. Sarah braced herself, knowing that their only chance lay in overwhelming the governor's forces before reinforcements arrived. For Earth and for freedom, she cried, leading her team in a desperate charge. The ensuing battle was fierce and chaotic, the sounds of blasters and the screams of the wounded echoing through the halls of the command center. But as the smoke cleared, it was Sarah and her comrades who emerged victorious, the fallen Imperial Governor at their feet. In that moment, a profound realization dawned on Sarah. This was only the beginning. The embers of rebellion had been stoked into a raging fire, and the Universal Empire would soon feel the full force of Earth's defiance. News of the Resistance's bold strike against the Imperial Command Center spread like wildfire across Earth, igniting hope and determination in the hearts of the people. For the first time, the seemingly invincible Universal Empire had been challenged and defeated on their home turf. However, the Imperial authorities were not about to let this insurrection go unanswered. Within days, a massive fleet of warships descended upon the planet, pouring legions of heavily armed soldiers and battle-hardened enforcers onto the streets of New Chicago and other key cities. Dr. Sarah Anderson and her team of resistance fighters knew that they were outmatched and outgunned, but they were determined to stand their ground. Leveraging their intimate knowledge of the urban environment and their ability to blend seamlessly with the civilian population, they launched a relentless campaign of guerrilla warfare against the Imperial occupiers. They think they can simply overwhelm us with brute force, but they underestimate the resolve of the Earthlings, Sarah said, addressing her lieutenants in a hastily assembled command center. We must use every tool at our disposal to blunt their advance and buy us time to prepare a more robust defense. Jack, the grizzled former military engineer, nodded in agreement. Our simulations show that the Imperial forces are relying heavily on their advanced hovercrafts and aerial support for mobility and firepower. If we can disrupt those supply lines and communication networks, it will severely hamper their ability to coordinate and reinforce their positions. Rika, the young hacker, stepped forward. I've been able to infiltrate the Imperial network and identify their main logistics hubs and command centers. We can use that information to plan a series of targeted strikes to cripple their operations. Sarah's eyes gleamed with determination. Then that's exactly what we'll do. Assemble the teams and prepare for the first wave of attacks. We need to show the Empire that we won't go down without a fight. Over the next several weeks, the resistance fighters executed a carefully orchestrated campaign of sabotage and ambushes against the Imperial forces. Using a combination of improvised explosives, electromagnetic pulse devices, and coordinated ground assaults, they managed to disrupt the Empire's ability to maintain a stable foothold on the planet. The Imperial commanders, accustomed to swift and decisive victories, found themselves increasingly frustrated by the tenacity and adaptability of the Earthlings. Their advanced technology and military might prove less effective against an enemy that refused to engage in conventional combat and instead utilized the urban terrain to their advantage. It's as if these primitives have developed an uncanny ability to anticipate our every move, one Imperial officer reported to his superiors. Our supply lines are being systematically targeted, and our ground forces are constantly under attack from unseen enemies. We're losing men and resources at an alarming rate. The news of the Earthlings' resilience reached the highest echelons of the Universal Empire, where the ruling council convened to discuss the growing crisis. The Emperor himself, a ruthless and calculating individual, was intrigued by the unexpected developments. It seems the people of Earth possess a remarkable capability for innovation and adaptation. The Emperor mused, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. Perhaps we have underestimated the potential of this world and its inhabitants. He turned to his chief military commander, a seasoned veteran known for his brutally efficient tactics. Send in our most elite forces. I want this rebellion crushed, but I also want to know more about these Earthlings and their hidden strengths. The commander bowed respectfully. It will be done, Your Majesty. We will leave no stone unturned in our pursuit of victory. Back on Earth, the resistance fighters continued to wage their asymmetric war against the Imperial occupiers. Sarah and her team had become masters of hit-and-run tactics, striking with surgical precision, and then melting back into the civilian population before the enemy could mount an effective counterattack. As the weeks turned into months, the toll on the Imperial forces mounted, and their once confident grip on the planet began to slip. Morale among the soldiers started to wane, and the sheer cost of maintaining their occupation became a growing burden on the Empire's resources. They're starting to crack, Rika reported excitedly during one of the Resistance's strategy sessions. Our latest intelligence indicates that the Empire is diverting more and more troops and material from other sectors to bolster their presence here. They're struggling to keep up with our attacks. Sarah nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Good. That means we're making a difference, but we can't afford to be complacent. The Empire will not give up easily. We need to continue to push the advantage and find ways to escalate the pressure. As the Earthlings' defiance continued to confound and frustrate the Imperial forces, a growing sense of unease spread through the ranks of the occupying army. They had come to this backwater world expecting an easy victory, but instead found themselves facing an enemy that refused to be cowed, an enemy whose determination and resourcefulness threatened to unravel the very fabric of the Universal Empire's control. The stage was set for an epic confrontation, one that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but perhaps the entire galaxy. The Imperial High Command watched with growing frustration as their forces struggled to quell the resistance on Earth. What had begun as a seemingly simple pacification operation had turned into a drawn-out campaign of attrition, with the Earthlings refusing to submit to the Empire's overwhelming military might. Determined to end the conflict once and for all, the Empire mobilized its most formidable assets, dispatching wave after wave of elite shock troops, devastating artillery barrages, and fearsome battle droids to crush the pockets of resistance that had sprung up across the planet. In the command center of the Imperial garrison, General Kravos, a seasoned and ruthless commander, pored over the latest intelligence reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. This so-called resistance movement has become a thorn in our side for far too long, he growled, his fist slamming down on the holotable. It's time we put an end to their defiance once and for all. He turned to his subordinates, his eyes narrowing. Initiate a full-scale assault on the major population centers. Leave no stone unturned. I want every last trace of this rebellion snuffed out. The order was swiftly relayed, and within hours, the skies above Earth's cities erupted in a display of devastating firepower. Massive warships unleashed a barrage of high-energy plasma cannons, raining destruction upon the urban landscape, while legions of battle-hardened Imperial troops poured in from all sides, determined to crush the resistance fighters in close-quarters combat. On the ground, Dr. Sarah Anderson and her team fought with everything they had, employing a ruthless combination of guerrilla tactics, strategic ambushes, and targeted sabotage to slow the Imperial advance. But even their best efforts were no match for the sheer scale and overwhelming force of the Empire's onslaught. They're coming at us from all sides, Rika shouted, her fingers flying across the holo interface as she desperately tried to coordinate the Resistance's defensive maneuvers. We're being pushed back. I don't know how much longer we can hold them off. Sarah gritted her teeth, her mind racing as she surveyed the devastation unfolding around them. The Imperial forces had brought the full might of their military arsenal to bear, and the Earthlings were struggling to keep up. "We have to buy more time," she said, her voice laced with determination. "Begin Phase 2 of the contingency plan. Activate the EMP charges and have the support teams ready the evacuation routes." Rika's eyes widened. "Sarah, that's a risky move. The EMP burst could take out our own communications and defenses too. And the evacuation routes." "I know the risks, Rika," Sarah interrupted. "But we have no choice. If we can't stop the Imperial advance, we need to ensure our people can escape and regroup. Now, make it happen." Rika hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly, relaying the orders to the resistance fighters scattered throughout the city. Moments later, a series of carefully coordinated electromagnetic pulses rippled through the Imperial forces, temporarily disabling their advanced technologies and communication systems. The sudden loss of their technological edge threw the invaders into disarray, giving the Earthlings a crucial window of opportunity. "Now," Sarah shouted, and the resistance teams sprang into action, leading civilians through the pre-planned evacuation routes and out of the line of fire. The Imperial troops, disoriented and cut off from their command structure, struggled to regain their footing, opening the door for the Earthlings to mount a more coordinated counterattack. Sarah and her comrades fought with a renewed sense of purpose, using the chaos to their advantage and inflicting heavy casualties on the bewildered Imperial forces. But the respite was short-lived. As the EMP's effects began to wear off, the Imperial military quickly adapted, deploying specialized units equipped with hardened electronics and backup communication systems. The relentless barrage of firepower soon overwhelmed the Resistance's defenses, forcing them to retreat further into the urban sprawl. "We can't hold them off much longer," Jack reported, his face etched with a mixture of frustration and fatigue. "The Imperial troops are closing in, and our people are getting trapped." Sarah's eyes narrowed as she considered their options. "Then we need to draw them in deeper and unleash the next phase of our plan. Have the support teams prepare the surprise we've been saving." Jack's expression shifted to one of understanding. "Are you sure about this, Sarah? It's a risky gambit, and we may not get a second chance." "I'm sure," Sarah replied, her voice resolute. "We've come too far to back down now. Relay the orders. It's time to show the Empire the true might of Earth." As the Imperial forces pushed deeper into the city, they encountered a sudden lull in the Resistance's defensive efforts. Sensing a break in the Earthlings' resolve, the Imperial commanders ordered their troops to advance, confident in their impending victory. But as the soldiers pressed forward, they found themselves suddenly enveloped in a series of powerful electromagnetic distortions, their advanced weaponry and equipment rendered useless. Panic spread through the ranks as the Earthlings emerged from their hiding places, wielding a range of innovative high-tech armaments that seemed to defy the Empire's technological superiority. "What is the meaning of this?" General Kravos roared, his face contorted with rage and confusion. "How dare these primitive fools challenge the might of the Empire?" Sarah, her eyes gleaming with triumph, stepped forward, her voice ringing out across the battlefield. "You have underestimated us for far too long, General," she declared. "Today, the people of Earth show you the true extent of our capabilities. This is just the beginning. The Universal Empire will soon feel the full force of our defiance." As the stunned Imperial troops scrambled to regain their footing, the Earthlings unleashed a devastating counterattack, their advanced technology and tactical prowess catching the invaders off guard. The tides of the battle had turned, and the Empire's vaunted military machine found itself outmatched and outmaneuvered on the streets of Earth. The confrontation was far from over, but in that moment, the Earthlings had delivered a resounding message to the Universal Empire. Their days of unchallenged dominance were numbered. As the smoke cleared from the fierce battle, the Imperial forces found themselves in a state of bewilderment and disarray. The Earthlings had not only repelled their assault, but had also managed to inflict significant casualties with a dazzling array of advanced technologies that seemed to defy the Empire's own scientific and military capabilities. General Kravos, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and confusion, summoned his top scientists and intelligence officers to his command center. "I want a full report on what just happened," he demanded. "How is it possible that these primitive humans were able to outmaneuver and outgun our finest troops?" One of the scientists, a pale-faced, bespectacled man named Dr. Theron, stepped forward, his expression grave. "General, the situation is troubling. Our initial analysis of the weapons and equipment used by the resistance fighters suggests a level of technological sophistication that is simply unprecedented for a civilization at this stage of development." Kravos narrowed his eyes. "Elaborate, Doctor. What are you saying?" Theron took a deep breath. "The energy signatures, material compositions, and underlying engineering principles behind the Earthlings' arsenal do not match anything in our own databases. In fact, they bear a striking resemblance to the technologies employed by the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy, civilizations that have long since vanished from the public record." The general's brow furrowed. "Are you suggesting that these Earthlings have somehow gained access to the knowledge and capabilities of those ancient lost cultures?" "That is precisely what our data is indicating," Theron replied, his voice tinged with a hint of trepidation. "We've conducted extensive genetic and biological analyses of the resistance fighters, and the results are even more disturbing." He tapped a few commands into the holoconsole, and a series of holographic images materialized above the table, depicting human DNA sequences overlaid with complex genetic markers. These genetic markers are unlike anything we've ever seen in the human genome. They appear to be the remnants of a highly advanced, engineered genome, one that would have given its bearers extraordinary physical and cognitive abilities far beyond the natural limitations of their species. Kravos leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the intricate genetic data. "You're telling me that these Earthlings are not even truly human?" Theron nodded solemnly. "It would seem that way, General. Our best hypothesis is that the Earthlings are the descendants of an ancient, technologically superior civilization that once thrived in this sector of the galaxy, a civilization that the Empire had believed to be long extinct." The general's fist slammed down on the holotable, the impact echoing through the command center. "Unacceptable. This cannot be allowed to stand. If these Earthlings possess such formidable capabilities, they pose a grave threat to the stability and security of the entire Empire." He turned to his subordinates, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Mobilize our most elite forces. I want every inch of this planet scoured, every last trace of this hidden legacy extinguished. We cannot allow this knowledge to fall into the wrong hands." As the Imperial war machine once again began its ominous march across Earth, Dr. Sarah Anderson and her resistance fighters braced themselves for the coming storm. They had known that their defiance would not go unanswered, but the revelations about their true nature had shaken them to the core. "So it's true," Sarah murmured, her brow furrowed in a mixture of awe and trepidation. "We are the inheritors of a legacy that predates the very existence of the Universal Empire." Rika, her eyes widened with a newfound understanding, nodded solemnly. "Yes, and that makes us an even greater threat in the Empire's eyes. They won't stop until they've either subjugated us or wiped us out entirely." Jack, his weathered features set in a grim expression, stepped forward. "Then we have no choice but to fight. We've come too far to back down now. The future of our people, of the entire galaxy, hangs in the balance." Sarah met his gaze, her resolve hardening. "You're right. We must uncover the full truth of our heritage and harness the power that lies dormant within us. Only then can we hope to stand against the might of the Universal Empire." In the days that followed, the resistance fighters worked tirelessly to decipher the genetic secrets that had been uncovered, delving deep into the hidden archives and ancient texts that had been carefully preserved by their ancestors. They discovered traces of a once advanced civilization, one that had possessed extraordinary technological and psychic abilities, and had once been a dominant force in the galaxy. But the knowledge had come at a heavy price. The Empire, driven by their fear and desire for control, ruthlessly hunted down every trace of this hidden legacy, dispatching their most formidable agents and devastating weapons to eradicate the Earthlings and the dangerous knowledge they possessed. Sarah and her comrades found themselves in a desperate race against time, forced to balance their efforts to uncover the truth with the need to defend their people from the relentless Imperial onslaught. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy hung in the balance. As the conflict escalated, the Earthlings began to unlock glimpses of their true potential, harnessing ancient psychic abilities and advanced technologies that pushed the Imperial forces to their limits. But the Empire's commitment to crushing this uprising only grew stronger, fueled by a deep-seated terror of the power that the Earthlings might wield. The stage was set for a titanic clash between the forces of oppression and the champions of a long-forgotten legacy, a clash that would determine the course of the entire galaxy for generations to come. As the Imperial forces tightened their grip on Earth, Dr. Sarah Anderson and her resistance fighters found themselves in a desperate race against time. The revelation of their true heritage, that they were the descendants of an ancient, advanced civilization, had shaken the very foundations of their understanding. Sarah pored over the ancient texts and genetic data they had uncovered, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. She knew that the key to turning the tide of the conflict lay in unlocking the full potential of their dormant abilities, abilities that had been buried beneath centuries of repression and forgotten history. "We're running out of time," she said grimly, addressing her core team of lieutenants. "The Empire is closing in, and they'll stop at nothing to eradicate every trace of our legacy." Jack, the grizzled former military engineer, nodded solemnly. "Then we have no choice but to accelerate our efforts. If we can't uncover the secrets of our past, we'll never be able to harness the power we need to defeat the Empire." Rika, the young hacker, chewed on her lower lip anxiously. "But how? The information we found is fragmented and incomplete. We're barely scratching the surface of what our ancestors were capable of." Sarah's gaze hardened with determination. "Then we need to go deeper. We must find a way to fully unlock the genetic code that lies dormant within us, to awaken the true potential that has been suppressed for generations." The team set to work, poring over the ancient texts and scouring the hidden archives for any clues that could lead them to the answers they sought. Meanwhile, the Imperial forces continued their relentless assault, pushing deeper into the heart of the Resistance strongholds. As the battles raged on, Sarah and her comrades began to experience strange, seemingly inexplicable phenomena. Flashes of intuition, heightened senses, and even moments of what appeared to be telekinetic ability started to manifest among the Resistance fighters. "It's working," Rika exclaimed, her eyes widening with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "The genetic markers we identified are starting to activate. The dormant abilities are being unlocked." Sarah nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Then we must push forward, gather the teams, and prepare them for the next phase of the operation. It's time to show the Empire the true power of the Earthlings." Across the war-torn cities of Earth, the Resistance fighters began to harness their newfound abilities, using them to outmaneuver and outmanipulate the Imperial forces. They could sense the movements of the enemy, anticipate their tactics, and even redirect the trajectories of incoming projectiles with a mere thought. The Imperial commanders, once confident in their technological and numerical superiority, found themselves increasingly baffled and unnerved by the uncanny abilities of their adversaries. Their advanced weaponry and battle strategies, which had proved so effective against other civilizations, seemed to falter in the face of the Earthlings' psychic prowess. "This is impossible," General Kravos roared, slamming his fist against the holo table as he studied the disastrous reports from the front lines. "How can these primitives possess such power?" Dr. Theron, the lead scientist, stepped forward, his expression grave. The genetic evidence is clear, General. The Earthlings are tapping into an ancient, dormant genome that grants them extraordinary abilities far beyond the norm of their species. We underestimated the depth of their hidden legacy. Kravos fixed the scientist with a cold, calculated stare. Then we must find a way to neutralize this threat, or the entire empire could be at risk. Dispatch our most elite units and equip them with the latest anti-xionic countermeasures. I want these Earthlings brought to heel, no matter the cost. As the Imperial forces mobilized their latest offensive, Sarah and her resistance fighters braced themselves for the impending onslaught. They knew that the battle would be fierce, but they also recognized that they were no longer fighting for mere survival. They were fighting to reclaim their rightful place in the galaxy. "This is our moment," Sarah declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "Our ancestors entrusted us with a great responsibility, and now is the time to fulfill that destiny. We will show the Empire the true power of the Earthlings." The resistance fighters, their minds and bodies now imbued with the ancient, dormant abilities, unleashed a devastating counterattack that shook the very foundations of the Imperial occupation. They could sense the movements of the enemy troops, anticipate their strategies, and even manipulate the flow of battle with their newfound psychic powers. The Imperial forces, caught off guard by the Earthlings' extraordinary abilities, found themselves struggling to maintain their grip on the planet. Tanks and armored vehicles were rendered useless as the resistance fighters effortlessly redirected their firepower or disabled their systems with a mere thought. Kravos, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage, watched helplessly as his vaunted military machine crumbled in the face of the Earthlings' onslaught. "This cannot be happening," he roared, his desperation palpable. "We must find a way to neutralize their power, or the entire empire will fall." As the battle raged on, Sarah and her comrades continued to push the advantage, their confidence and determination growing with every Imperial setback. They knew that they were not just fighting for the freedom of their own world, but for the liberation of the entire galaxy from the Empire's oppressive rule. The stage was set for a climactic confrontation, one that would determine the fate of not just Earth, but the very future of the Universal Empire itself. The Imperial High Command convened in a state of deep consternation, the defeat of their forces on Earth shaking the very foundations of their power. General Kravos, his face etched with a mixture of fury and trepidation, paced the length of the command center, his mind racing. "This is unacceptable," he growled, his fist clenching. "How is it possible that these Earthlings, these supposed primitives, have managed to turn the tide of the battle so decisively?" Dr. Theron, the lead scientist, cleared his throat nervously. "The evidence is clear, General. The genetic markers we discovered are the key to the Earthlings' newfound abilities. They possess a dormant genome that grants them extraordinary psychic and technological capabilities that far surpass our own." Kravos whirled around, his eyes narrowing. "Then we must find a way to neutralize this threat. The stability of the entire empire is at stake." One of the other officers, a seasoned tactician named Admiral Varys, stepped forward. "General, I understand your concern, but we must also consider the strategic implications of this discovery. These Earthlings possess knowledge and abilities that could be of immense value to the Empire, if we can bring them under our control." Kravos scoffed. "Control? How can we hope to control an enemy that can manipulate our very technology with the power of their mind?" Varys raised a hand, his expression calm. "Perhaps we have been approaching this problem the wrong way. Instead of seeking to crush the Earthlings, we should consider the possibility of forging an alliance, one that would cement our hold over this sector and potentially unlock the secrets of their ancient legacy." The general's brow furrowed, his shoulders tense. "An alliance? With these upstart rebels? Preposterous. The Empire does not negotiate with those who defy our authority." Theron cleared his throat once more, drawing the attention of the room. "General, Admiral Varys may have a point. The Earthlings' genetic and technological capabilities represent a potential game-changer for the Empire. If we can somehow bring them into the fold, the benefits could be immeasurable. Kravos regarded the scientist with a withering glare. And what, pray tell, makes you believe these Earthlings would even consider such an arrangement? They have already proven themselves to be a thorn in our side, and their leader, this Dr. Anderson, has made it clear that their goal is to challenge the Empire's rule. Varys stepped forward, his tone measured. That may be true, but the Earthlings are also pragmatists. They know that they cannot defeat the full might of the Imperial forces on their own. If we offer them a degree of autonomy and influence within the Empire's structure, they may be willing to reconsider their stance. The general's jaw tightened, but a glimmer of understanding flickered in his eyes. You propose a conditional alliance, then, one where the Earthlings are granted a level of self-governance in exchange for their loyalty and the sharing of their technological secrets. Varys nodded. Precisely. It would be a delicate negotiation, to be sure, but the potential rewards far outweigh the risks. With the Earthlings' abilities at our disposal, the Empire's dominance over this sector could be cemented for generations to come. Kravos considered the proposal, his fingers drumming against the holotable. After a long moment of silence, he finally spoke. Very well. Dispatch a diplomatic envoy to Earth immediately. Make it clear to these Earthlings that they have a choice. Submit to the Empire's rule and share their knowledge, or be crushed without mercy. As the Imperial forces prepared for the critical negotiations, Dr. Sarah Anderson and her resistance fighters braced themselves for the confrontation. They knew that the Empire would not simply concede defeat, and the stakes had never been higher. They're making a move, Ricker reported, her fingers flying across the holo interface. An Imperial diplomatic team is en route to the city. It seems they want to negotiate a truce. Sarah's brow furrowed, her mind racing. A truce. After all we've done to challenge their authority. This has to be a trap. Jack, the grizzled engineer, nodded in agreement. I agree. The Empire doesn't negotiate with those who defy their rule. They're likely looking for a way to neutralize our abilities and bring us under their control. Sarah's gaze hardened with determination. Then we must be prepared for their offer. We've come too far to back down now. The future of our people and the entire galaxy hangs in the balance. As the Imperial envoy arrived in the battered streets of New Chicago, they were greeted with a mix of defiance and cautious curiosity from the Earthlings. Sarah and her core team of resistance leaders stood firm, their expressions wary as the diplomats made their pitch. The Universal Empire is willing to offer a conditional alliance, the lead diplomat stated, his voice measured. In exchange for your cooperation and the sharing of your technological and genetic secrets, we are prepared to grant your people a degree of autonomy and influence within the Imperial structure. Sarah narrowed her eyes, her mind racing. And if we refuse? The diplomat's expression darkened. Then the Empire will have no choice but to use the full extent of its military might to crush your rebellion, once and for all. The Earthlings fell silent, weighing the gravity of the Imperial offer. They knew that the Empire's forces were still formidable, and that a direct confrontation could result in the complete annihilation of their people. But the prospect of submitting to the Empire's rule and surrendering the secrets of their ancient legacy was equally unpalatable. As the tense negotiations unfolded, Sarah and her comrades huddled, their voices hushed as they debated the merits and risks of the Imperial proposal. The fate of their world, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance, and they knew that their decision would have far-reaching consequences. Finally, Sarah stepped forward, her gaze unwavering as she met the diplomat's eyes. We will consider your offer. But know this, the Earthlings will not be cowed, and we will never surrender the truth of our heritage to the Empire. The terms of any alliance will be non-negotiable. The diplomat's lips tightened into a thin line, but he inclined his head in acknowledgement. Very well. We await your response, Dr. Anderson. The future of your world, and the Empire, hangs in the balance. As the Imperial envoy departed, Sarah and her team were left to grapple with the weight of the decision that lay before them. The path forward was uncertain, But one thing was clear: the confrontation with the Universal Empire was far from over. The tense negotiations between the representatives of Earth and the Universal Empire dragged on for weeks, with both sides fiercely guarding their interests. Dr. Sarah Anderson and her resistance fighters knew that they held a powerful bargaining chip in the form of their newly unlocked genetic and technological capabilities, but they also recognized the grave risks of aligning themselves with the very empire they had fought so hard to challenge. "They're offering us a tenuous foothold within their structure," Sarah said, addressing her core team during a strategy meeting. "But the price they demand in return is the full disclosure of our ancestral secrets and an oath of loyalty to the Empire." Jack, the grizzled former military engineer, crossed his arms over his chest, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's a dangerous gambit, Sarah. The Empire has never been known for keeping their word, and we'd essentially be putting our necks in the noose." Rika, the young hacker, chewed on her lower lip anxiously. "But if we refuse, they'll crush us with the full weight of their military might. We may not have the strength to withstand another onslaught, not after the heavy losses we've already suffered." Sarah nodded solemnly. "I know. That's why we have to tread carefully. Any alliance with the Empire will have to be on our terms. We can't afford to give them unfettered access to our knowledge and abilities." The team fell silent, the weight of their decision heavy in the air. They knew that the fate of their world, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Failure to strike the right balance could mean the end of their resistance movement, while capitulating to the Empire's demands could cost them their hard-won freedom and the legacy of their ancestors. After much deliberation, Sarah and her lieutenants reached a consensus. They would enter into the negotiations with the Empire, but with a clear set of non-negotiable demands. Demands that would grant them a significant degree of autonomy and influence within the Imperial structure. "We've made our decision," Sarah announced to the Imperial diplomats, her voice resolute. "We are willing to consider an alliance, but only on the condition that our people are granted full self-governance over Earth, with the ability to maintain our own laws, customs, and technological development." The lead diplomat, a seasoned negotiator named Astra, regarded Sarah with a measured expression. "That is a bold proposal, Dr. Anderson. The Empire has never before granted such concessions to a conquered world." "Then consider us the exception," Sarah replied, her gaze unwavering. "We are not a typical conquered people, as you well know. Our abilities and knowledge are of immense value to the Empire, and we intend to leverage that to secure the best possible terms for our world." Astra's lips tightened into a thin line, but she nodded slowly. "Very well. I will relay your demands to the Imperial High Command. However, I must warn you, they will not take kindly to such a degree of autonomy being granted to a former rebel faction." "That is their concern, not ours," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We have endured the Empire's oppression for far too long. This is our chance to chart a new path, one where our people can thrive without the constant threat of subjugation." The negotiations that followed were tense and arduous, with both sides jockeying for the upper hand. The Imperial representatives, faced with the daunting prospect of the Earthlings' psychic and technological capabilities falling into the hands of their rivals, were reluctant to concede too much ground. But Sarah and her team remained steadfast, leveraging their knowledge and the strategic advantage they had gained through their hard-fought victories. They refused to back down, knowing that anything less than a true partnership on equal terms would eventually lead to the erosion of their hard-won freedoms. After weeks of grueling back and forth, a tentative agreement was reached. The Earthlings would be granted a degree of self-governance over their home world, with the ability to maintain their own political, economic, and social structures. In exchange, they would provide the Empire with access to their genetic and technological secrets, as well as a commitment to support the Imperial forces in the event of external threats. "This is not the outcome I had hoped for," General Kravos growled, his fist clenching as he reviewed the terms of the agreement. "These Earthlings have gained far too much leverage." Admiral Varys, who had advocated for the negotiated settlement, placed a calming hand on the general's shoulder. I understand your frustration, Kravos, but we must think of the long-term benefits. With the Earthlings' abilities at our disposal, the Empire's hold over this sector will be unassailable. Kravos' jaw tightened, but he nodded reluctantly. Very well. But I still do not trust these rebels-turned allies. We must keep a close watch on them, and be prepared to act swiftly should they attempt to betray us. As the terms of the agreement were finalized, Sarah and her team faced a mix of emotions. They had managed to secure a significant degree of autonomy for their world, but the knowledge that they had made a pact with the very empire they had fought so hard to challenge weighed heavily upon them. "We've walked a fine line," Sarah said, her gaze sweeping over her comrades. "But we must remember that this is not the end of our struggle. The Empire may have granted us a measure of freedom, but they will be ever watchful, ready to tighten their grip at the first sign of dissent." Jack nodded, his weathered features set in a grim expression. "Then we must be vigilant, ready to defend our hard-won liberties at a moment's notice. The fight for true freedom is far from over." Rika's eyes gleamed with a mixture of determination and trepidation. "We've come this far, Sarah. I know we can continue to navigate these treacherous waters, no matter the cost." Sarah reached out, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "Yes, we will. For the sake of our people, and the future of the entire galaxy, we must not falter. The Earthlings' destiny is our own to forge, and we will not rest until we have broken the shackles of the Empire's dominance, once and for all." With a renewed sense of purpose, the Resistance fighters braced themselves for the next chapter of their struggle, a struggle that would test the limits of their abilities and challenge the very foundations of the Universal Empire's rule. The signing of the conditional alliance between Earth and the Universal Empire sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For the first time in its long history, the mighty Imperial authority had been forced to acknowledge the sovereignty and unique capabilities of a conquered people, granting them a significant degree of autonomy and influence within its structure. On the streets of New Chicago, the mood was a complex mix of relief, wariness, and cautious optimism. Dr. Sarah Anderson and her Resistance fighters had fought long and hard to secure this hard-won compromise, but they knew that the true test was only just beginning. "We've come a long way, my friends," Sarah addressed her core team, her expression somber. "But we must never forget that the Empire's grip on power is not easily broken. They may have agreed to our terms, but they will be ever watchful, ready to seize any opportunity to tighten their control over our world." Jack, the grizzled former military engineer, nodded in agreement. "Ain't that the truth? Those Imperial bastards will be looking for any excuse to undermine our autonomy. We can't let our guard down, not for a second." Rika, the young hacker, chewed on her lower lip, her brow furrowed in thought. "So, what's our next move? We've secured a seat at the table, but how do we ensure that we can actually wield that influence to better the lives of our people?" Sarah's gaze hardened with determination. "We play the game, Rika. We use our position within the Imperial structure to gain access to resources, technology, and information that can help us strengthen our defenses and improve the lives of the Earthlings. But we must also be vigilant, ready to resist any attempts by the Empire to erode our hard-won freedoms." The team fell silent, the weight of their responsibility pressing heavily upon them. They knew that the fate of not just their world, but the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Their actions in the years to come would determine whether the Earthlings' long-suppressed legacy would be a force for liberation or subjugation. In the halls of the Imperial capital, the ruling council convened to discuss the ramifications of the Earthlings' newfound status. The Emperor himself, a shrewd and calculating individual, regarded the developments with a mix of trepidation and intrigue. "This alliance with Earth is unprecedented," he mused, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Never before have we granted such concessions to a conquered people. What is it about these Earthlings that has compelled us to make such a concession?" One of the council members, a seasoned diplomat named Astra, spoke up. "Your Majesty, The Earthlings' genetic and technological capabilities pose a grave threat to the stability of the Empire. If we had not reached this agreement, they could have become a rallying point for dissent and rebellion across our territories. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. And yet, by granting them a degree of autonomy, we risk empowering a potential rival. This is a delicate balance, Astra, one that we cannot afford to mishandle. Astra inclined her head respectfully. I understand your concerns, Your Majesty. However, I believe that with careful management and strategic oversight, we can harness the Earthlings' abilities to our advantage. Their knowledge and resources could prove invaluable in strengthening our hold over this sector of the galaxy. The Emperor considered her words, his gaze thoughtful. You make a compelling argument. Very well, Astra. I will entrust you with the task of overseeing the implementation of this alliance. But be warned, any sign of betrayal or subversion, and the Earthlings will face the full might of the Imperial wrath. Astra bowed, her expression solemn. It will be done, Your Majesty. I will ensure that the Earthlings remain loyal and compliant, while also extracting the maximum benefit from this arrangement for the Empire. As the negotiations and political maneuverings unfolded, Sarah and her team worked tirelessly to prepare their world for the challenges that lay ahead. They knew that the path ahead would be fraught with obstacles, but they were determined to ensure that the Earthlings' newfound influence within the Imperial structure would be used to improve the lives of their people and pave the way for a brighter future. We've come this far by working together, Sarah addressed the growing network of resistance fighters and civilian leaders. Now we must continue to stand united, to use our unique position to drive positive change, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. The Earthlings, once dismissed as primitive and insignificant, began to assert their presence within the Imperial power structure. They leveraged their scientific and technological expertise to secure lucrative contracts and resource agreements, funneling the profits back into the development of their world. At the same time, they worked to strengthen their defenses, fortifying their cities and stockpiling advanced weaponry in preparation for any potential backlash from the Empire. Sarah and her team knew that the Imperial authorities would be ever watchful, ready to pounce at the first sign of dissent or disloyalty. As the years passed, the Earthlings' influence within the Empire grew, and their legacy began to shape the course of galactic events. They used their position to advocate for reforms, to champion the rights of oppressed peoples, and to challenge the Empire's long-standing policies of exploitation and subjugation. The Universal Empire, once the undisputed ruler of the cosmos, found itself grappling with a new reality, one where a once insignificant world had become a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of hope and resistance in the face of overwhelming power. The Earthlings have changed the game, one Imperial strategist remarked, his voice tinged with a mix of admiration and trepidation. They've proven that even the mightiest of empires can be challenged, that the status quo is not set in stone. Indeed, the confrontation with Earth had forever altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The Earthlings, the inheritors of an ancient advanced legacy, had risen to become the champions of a new era, one where the Universal Empire's dominance would be tested, and the future of the cosmos would hang in the balance.